Yo, let's go. Let's get right to the info. All right, I've got the changes up here. These changes will go live on February 27th for NA on the reset and February 28th for EU when EU resets. The first three are really dealing with restoration spells, Life Bloom, Living Seed, Nourish. A couple of changes with those. The bottom three deal with us balanced druids. So the first change, Moonkinform now also reduces the mana cost of Moonfire by 50% and increases Moonfire periodic damage by 50%. Sunfire also benefits from this change. Something that I've noticed in game though is Moonglow does not currently apply to Sunfire, and that's a mana cost reduction, so I wonder when this goes live if the mana cost portion of this is actually going to work. Is it going to fix that bug that's currently live for Moonglow? Not a huge deal now, but might be a bit of a deal in later phases, the level 50, level 60 brackets, who knows. But it's going to reduce Moonfire's cost from 235 with no points in Moonglow down to about 118. And Sunfire cost 179, again with no points, or I guess with points in Moonglow because it's not changing. So 179 down to about 90 mana per cast. And then the periodic damage increasing by 50% is going to make us want to use both of these in our rotation for PvE. And I'll demonstrate why on the Balanced Druid Sim after we finish going through these changes really quick. So the second change is Moonkins can now cast non-healing restoration spells without canceling their shapeshift, which is going to include Remove Curse, Remove Poison, Abolish Poison, Innervate, Rebirth, Revive, Mark of the Wild, and Gift of the Wild. And there's a spell there that takes us out of form in later phases when we have the points to spec down into the resto tree to get Insect Swarm, and that's not currently on that list, but maybe it's because we can't get Moonkinform right now and get Insect Swarm, so at level 60 maybe that spell's going to get added, but right now as it stands, no mention of Insect Swarm being able to be used while in Moonkinform. But this is a big deal for me for PvP. Being able to abolish poison while in Moonkinform is huge. Innervating without having to shift out of form and hope to not get stunned out of form. Popping Rebirth in Raid is going to be crazy in Moonkinform. Being able to buff while in Moonkinform, really nice changes for PvE. Remove Curse across the board, a really nice change. I think it kind of would have been cooler though if this came from a book from a dungeon. I haven't ran RFD, so for me personally, if this book dropped off the last boss in RFD or something, then it would get me out into dungeons and give me something to do other than them just giving it to us, which that's also fine. Makes it easier when I level a couple of Druid alts. I don't have to continuously go back to RFD or anything. That's a tangent. Sorry, we're back on the last change. Fury of Storm Rage improved. When this rune makes Healing Touch instant, it now also makes it castable in all shapeshift forms. So this is great for balanced druids that love to off-heal for raids. You can now spam your Healing Touch while in Moonkinform. You'd have to drop form to Wild Growth or cast any other heals, but you could be providing 3% spell crit to your group and pop people off with your Healing Touch if needed. And it's another big one for PvP. If I'm sat in the back line, spamming out some wraths, getting the Fury of Storm Rage Healing Touch proc, then I can top up some other PvPers nearby me, heal myself up if I get a proc, and then I get stunned and opened on by a rogue, and then they cheap shot between the eyes, and then I'm down to 5% health. Pop a free Healing Touch, not have to drop form. Really, really cool change. So overall, I'm feeling like these are better changes for PvP. But let's take a little bit of a dive into the dot damage increase and what that's going to do for our rotation and DPS in Nomergon. If you go to the SoD Balanced Druid Sim for the first time, it will automatically implement some things for you. I'm going to go through some of the changes that I do to the sim when I do some testing for myself. I change the iterations up to a little bit higher. 3,000 is pretty low. It takes a little longer to do more than that, but to me, it's a little bit more accurate. I used to do 25k, I've just been doing 10k. So if we hit the sim button right now, it's looking like 542 DPS. This set has 3% hit, 5% is the cap, so the set is 2% below the hit cap. I take it one step further and change the insulated pieces to a full irradiated set, then you can resim and see it's a little bit more DPS to be full irradiated. So that's the changes that I make to the gear. Let's go over to the settings. It's got enchanting and leatherworking as the professions. That seems to be the best two professions that we can have right now in phase 2. Gives us the enchanted sigil, which is 20 spell power, and that stacks with the lesser arcane elixir and the weapon oil. So if we want to add more damage to this, there's a few fights that we can still quote-unquote melee weave. So we could change the Sagefish Delight over to the Dragon's Breath Chili and change the distance from the target down to at least 5 yards, anywhere 0 to 5 yards. So then if we resim, you can see this is going even higher, another almost 15 DPS just by melee weaving. The talents that this likes to have is 5 in Moon Fury and 4 in Improved Starfire. From what I've seen, it doesn't really matter which point goes where to max out. Kind of a personal preference thing. To see slightly bigger numbers, hit that last point in Moon Fury. But to maybe have a smoother rotation, you could have the last point in Improved Starfire. And for the rotation itself, I would change it from auto to APL and then hit the phase 2 saved option. A couple of things to change here. This has Sunfire already enabled, but we want to also enable Moonfire and change the pre-pull action to 2.99 seconds. And for the final sim number of everything included, because the 50% dot damage is included right now, it's live on the sim. So I'm up to almost 580 DPS, whereas before the 50% was included, Sunfire, Moonfire wasn't used in the rotation. I was at about 552. And with that 552, that was with the nature debuff already applied to the boss, like at the very start of the fight. So if I kept my settings exactly the same, then I'd have just about 582. So the dot change from all the settings that I had used before is about 30 DPS. So if we go over to the results tab after simming everything, you can see the rotation it's using. It's Star Surge, Sunfire, Moonfire, Wrath, Star Surge, Starfire, Wrath, and then Wrath. We might be able to get slightly more DPS out of this live. Maybe there's a way to change this in the APL, but it's being suggested by some homies, Innate, Wander, some other people in the Bounce Druid Discord probably, to put 1 dot between each Star Surge to try to increase the chance that Starfire will have a Nature's Grace proc. So when this change goes live, the suggested rotation would be to Star Surge, Sunfire, Starfire, Wrath, and then Star Surge, Moonfire, Starfire, Wrath. So if you include the pre-casted Starfire, then that's 3 spells before you're casting the in-combat Starfire to give Nature's Grace. And then the same with the second Starfire in combat. You would have the Wrath, Star Surge, and Moonfire before your Starfire to have Nature's Grace to reduce the cast time down from either 2.1 down to 1.6 or 2 seconds down to 1.5, depending on the talents you want to use. So I encourage you to go to the sim tool, use the settings that you would like to test around with, different fight links, melee weaving, no melee weaving, changing that point from Moon Fury into Improved Starfire, different tier sets, all that kind of stuff. Test it out for yourself and see what you can come up with.